in your own way, we would ask you just to observe a moment of silence, please.
Silence.
Thank you. Today is also Mandela Day. Many of you have done your 67 minutes and more. Count this as part of it. The theme of Mandela Day is taking action against poverty. We think one of the key actions out of state institutions has meant that they cannot carry out their core responsibilities, and there's a ripple effect into the rest of society. So today we are joined by a number of other organizations who will get to share their perspectives on the issue that we are gathered here today, and that is primarily to deal with the fight back as we describe it. The program essentially going to ask Alex Mashelo to read the statement that all of you have. You might say, well, why are we reading it? Because you have it. Some of you might want to just hear his wonderful voice. So we'll ask Alex to read this. Thereafter will be a short address by Solly Mapiela, just, I think, contextualizing why we are here and what we intend doing about the issue that brings us together. The Young Communist League will be one of many organizations who will have 2 minutes just to address the audience here in terms of their stand on the issue of the fight back. And thereafter we'll engage with all of yourselves on whatever questions you might have before we close. Now, there are some refreshments here for those of you who stay the course. They are instructed in fact not to give it to anybody who leaves earlier. So if nothing else, stay until, because you will enjoy that. There will be a photo opportunity with this banner afterwards, depending on how long we begin to take. So on that note, let me ask Alex just to read through first, please.
Okay, should I sit down? Thank you very much, Nishan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will present the statement as tasked. The occasion of Nelson Mandela's 101 birthday provides an opportunity to reflect on the principles underpinning the fight for an ethical and efficient constitutional democracy that puts the interests of the people first. We honor and celebrate the lifetime of struggle and dedication exemplified by the likes of Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu and Albertina Sisulu, Ahmed Kathrada, Joe Slovo, Ruth First, Steve Biko, Helen Suzman, Robert Sobukwe, and numerous others in fighting apartheid and establishing a democratic society. At the same time, we recognize the efforts of ethical leaders as well as ordinary South Africans over the last few years to protect the very democracy established by our liberation stalwarts. However, despite recent victories against state capture and corruption, we are well aware that this fight has not come to an end. Networks that propped up the shadow state remain active and continue to undermine our democracy. Today, we face a concerted fight back against the renewal of our society by many of those implicated in state capture. Theirs is an attempt to subvert the processes underway to rebuild efficient and ethical governance so that they may remain unaccountable. State establishments, legislative bodies, political parties and private entities continue being used by the networks of state capture fight back to hamper efforts to clean up our government and make it work in the interest of all South Africans, not just a select few well-connected individuals. Chapter 9 institutions are not immune from being drawn into the agenda through what comes across as being politically motivated complaints. The foundation of our democracy is at stake, as is the future of our country and plans to positively transform the lives of our people. We are at the crossroads that can either see us rebuilding our country after a decade of capture or being drawn backwards to an ethically bankrupt state. We are calling for ever higher levels of vigilance and energy in the defense of our democracy. South Africans should unite in confronting the fight back and putting an end to state capture networks that continue operating brazenly. All who took up the cudgels, picked up their pens and raised their voices before should once again proclaim, hands off our democracy. In kicking off what we believe is long-term work in mobilizing society against the fight back and in defense of our democracy, we will be hosting a public rally on Sunday, 21 July at 2 p.m. at the Johannesburg City Hall. Here, we will make it clear that we refuse to allow ministers, public officials, whistleblowers, activists and journalists who speak out against state capture to be targeted, subdued and defamed by political bullies, individuals and entities who seek to undermine their efforts. We will also challenge the peddling of fake and often highly racialized narratives that aim to characterize those who fight state capture as being counter-revolutionaries, anti-black and anti the so-called radical economic transformation, which is nothing but fake. These falsehoods are aimed at diverting attention from the looting and malfeasance and form part of the fight back to protect those responsible for complicity in state capture and the decay of accountable governance. We find it extremely concerning that the discredited SARS rogue unit, so-called, narrative is being perpetrated yet again. What is disturbing is that this effort is now premised on recent reports by the Office of the Public Protector. Public money going into the billions has been diverted from state coffers over the last few years, but the Public Protector seems to be overly preoccupied with the old rogue unit narrative that has always been widely debunked. This narrative has been previously exposed as being a tool that was used to cripple SARS capacity and its effectiveness to fulfill its mandate of bringing tax dodgers to book. The same approach is now being applied to the broader state capture project. Over the last few days in particular, there have been attempts to convince us that state capture is either a figment of our imagination or a concept used by covert agencies to persecute certain people. These arguments have no currency with the public, who have really borne the brunt of the day-to-day consequences of a hollowed-out state. It is the public who have had to put up with Eskom's electricity cuts, with poor services because of failing municipalities, with infrastructure that is old and unreliable, and with gang wars, drugs, rampant crime, and attacks on women and children because of a criminal justice system that has been systematically weakened. It is the rents in our pockets, pension funds and investments that went tumbling down following outrageous cabinet changes. It is the ordinary person who feels the pinch of a crisis-ridden economy. Failure to acknowledge that billions have been lost in the last few years under the watch of those who profess to be victims of plots and conspiracies is perhaps a bid to absolve themselves of any accountability for the mess this country finds itself right now. The effects of state capture and corruption have been laid to bear. The capacity of government to meet its fundamental role, meeting the needs of all South Africans, has been reduced and our institutions hollowed out. The criminal justice system, particularly in areas of prosecution and crime intelligence, was systematically corroded and manipulated for political purposes. Those who should have been paying millions of rands in taxes were aided by unscrupulous elements within SARS and other institutions to deprive our country of valuable revenue. Our state-owned enterprises have been rendered bankrupt or incapable of optimally delivering critical services and place a massive drain on the fiscus. Government has not been able to deliver basic services such as health, education, utilities, and housing. It was repurposed to serve a rent-seeking political and corporate elite. Good, honest public representatives and civil servants who refused to do the bidding of corrupt masters were pushed out of their position. Parliament was unable to fulfill its role in holding the executive to account regarding the Nkandla matter under former President Jacob Zuma's administration, as the Constitutional Court did rule. Our economy has stopped growing, partly because we are unable to attract significant investment, local and foreign. The private sector has an important role to play in reviving the economy, and private sector players also need to be held to account for breaches of corporate governance and defrauding of shareholders. Unemployment is rising and poverty and hunger is becoming commonplace. We face even further economic crises if rating agencies are not convinced that we will have a clean, efficient and capable government. We cannot wish them away. They do exist, and the decisions they make do have, particularly if they are adverse, do have a negative impact on us, regardless of what many of us think about them. Some of the successes in addressing these issues include public pressure that resulted in ending a presidency which saw South Africa stumble through 9 largely detrimental years, during which the negatives overwhelmed the positives. The establishment of 3 commissions of inquiry, all related to the abuse of state institutions and capture. These include the commissions of inquiry into allegations of state capture, the commission of inquiry into tax administration and governance by SARS, and the commission of inquiry into allegations of impropriety at the Public Investment Corporation, the PIC. We have also seen the beginning of a clean-up process at key institutions of the state in an effort to enable these institutions to effectively implement their constitutional and legal mandates. In taking forward the fight against state capture, we affirm our support for the work of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. We'll continue voicing our dissatisfaction with compromised individuals holding official positions within government and state institutions. Call on the National Prosecuting Authority not to waste time, but to begin pressing charges against those who, through credible evidence, have been implicated in state capture and corruption. Call on President Cyril Ramaphosa, political parties, civil society organizations and South Africans from all walks of life to defend and rally behind public representatives and civil servants who have stood up to corruption and who are tackling state capture. Call on political parties to restore Parliament to a credible, national and secure environment to debate critical issues affecting our country. That cannot be a place to unleash violence. Call for cross-party unity to have the National Assembly as a matter of agency begin the process of reviewing the public protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhobane's fitness to hold office based on various adverse court findings on several of her reports. Call for transparent and open mechanisms to be put in place in appointing key public servants within state and Chapter 9 institutions to minimize the risk of individuals with questionable integrity assuming office. It has been more than 20 years now we are in a democratic dispensation. Recruitment in the state must be based on merit, capacity, and dedication to the people without compromise. Demand transparency around political party funding and full compliance by parties to the political party funding bill. Open the debate around electoral reform and call for the appointment of competent and ethical individuals imposed within the criminal justice system, as it should be the case throughout the state, and as a start to ensure that processes are put in place to remove those with criminal records, particularly serious criminal records. Also, to ensure effective mechanisms are in place to protect whistleblowers within the system itself. Central to all this, we call for the revival of the broad fronts which helped us to achieve key victories in the fight against state capture over the last few years. This must include the private sector playing a role in reviving our economy, civil society acting vigilantly against all acts of corruption, and political parties taking a moral stance and committing to tackling state capture and corruption, even if perpetrated by their own members. On this Mandela Day, let us reaffirm our commitment to defending our democracy and confronting state capture fight back. This statement was endorsed by the following organizations: Active Citizens Movement, Amnesty International, World Socio-Economic Research Institute, Business Leadership South Africa, Center for Change, Corruption Watch, Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, Dream Celsius Group, Forensic for Justice, Freedom Under Law, Greater Mayfair Civic Association, Helen Suzman Foundation, International Movement of Tamil Culture, Johannesburg Against Injustice, Merebank Justice Network, Patriotic Movement, Peace Center, Section 27, Sivana Sabe Lanasia, South African Communist Party, Space of Good Hope, Teddy Bear Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. So the foundation in the last sort of 6 months, we've been getting a sense of who's doing what on the work around state capture. And I must say to you, there's a huge amount of work done by individual organizations in the areas of research, in the area of advocacy, policy work, supporting the MPA in different ways. In Cape Town, the Unite Behind organization.
Just sit down.
Oh, okay. Have been focusing on public mobilization, dealing with the issues of trains, and in different parts of the country, various institutions have been taking forward this fight in their own particular ways. What you have not had since the two formations, Save SA, Future SA, and others, is an ability to network our efforts, to coordinate it, and to act in a collaborative way when and where that is required. We are not launching such initiatives here today. What we are really highlighting are areas of work that we are all focusing on, and where possible, all of these structures and others will find ways of coordinating their work so that there's greater national impact. So on that note, there are chairs as well, I think, on the back, and there's still some space here in front. On that note, let me ask Solima Piela from the SACP to just share some of his comments and observations on why we are here and what we're hoping to do.
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade Sean. Quite clearly, the statements.
Okay.
101, media 101.
No, these instruments should be so advanced for modern times. No, the main thing to highlight, I was indicating that the statement covered almost all the key issues that we wanted to raise as the Communist Party. We feel embraced in the articulation of the statement. We are looking forward to work with all other organizations that are present here, even those that are not, including those that have endorsed the statement, and others that have indicated that they will be endorsing the statement as we roll out the campaign, particularly when we have our mass meeting on Sunday at the Johannesburg City Hall. We hope that mass meeting will act as an impetus for mobilization of all other civil society organizations and individuals who want to protect our country. We fought very hard to be where we are. We can't allow to be taken back. We have seen, for instance, recent comments at the Commission that are quite disparaging against the work that has been achieved, even by those who were involved, even in setting up the Commission, who have actually denounced its efforts. So it's high time that we get more vigilant and mobilized, and particularly deal with the criminal elements, some that have actually even held our democratic institutions at ransom, like, for instance, SARS. The mafias, the illicit traders, have the guts to actually demand or even have our state institutions paying them instead of them paying the state what is due, or the public what is due. And that is why, as a Communist Party, we are quite clear, and we are not even fooled by some of the political parties that have particularly joined the program in defense of public protector Advocate Mkweban. it is quite clear of their interest. Their interest lies with what is happening at SARS and the nature and the intent to capture SARS. And it is this campaign that will also protect such institutions as our revenue services. And the criminal elements, and we are happy with the court ruling yesterday against what was characterized as a rogue unit, a unit that has done a wonderful job, a unit that has detained and held accountable criminals, drug dealers, illicit tobacco traders, abalone poachers, and many other criminals, tax dodgers. That unit, created within the framework of the law, those comrades are heroes of our country. In fact, they deserve a great round of applause for the work that they've done for this country, but they've been criminalized by the rogue units, the real rogue units that has captured our institutions. So this program is therefore aimed to clean that institution, also to expose the political parties that have actually been funded by these criminal syndicates who are now being in the forefront, abusing our democratic space, including in parliament, to try and reverse the work that has been done. It is therefore in this regard that we want to appreciate, Comrade Sean, the work of the foundation for being persistent in making sure that we come together in this form. I see our dear comrade Mark is here. He should be joining us here in front. We have worked very hard with Comrade Mark in the mobilization of civil society in different forms. And I think we cannot allow to go back from where we are. We are moving forward. We will defend our democracy. That's all we want to say as the South African Communist Party. We invite all of you and your families and all members, progressive, to join us on Sunday in a mass rally to show efforts and support to those who have been at the forefront of the campaign to clean our state institutions and to fight corruption, particularly people like Comrade Pravin Gordhan, who has been singled out as a stumbling block in the fight against corruption by some of the people in the state-owned enterprises, particularly, even some disappointingly very educated people who are actually feeling that a fight against corruption in state-owned enterprises is a fight against blackness. There's no black professional who should be proud with corruption. We fought not for black professionals to be corrupt, but to express their capacity in service of humanity and in service of their country. And therefore, this narrative that Pravin is anti-black in order to perpetuate corruption in state-owned entities is completely unacceptable. When you look at what happened with VBS, top black professionals involved in stealing money belonging to old women and men, pensioners and village people, unashamedly they steal from the poor. So we cannot accept that. So I want to also say, people like Comrade PG, who have stood firm implementing the government resolutions and the movement resolutions to fight against corruption, should be protected by all of us. If we allow someone like PG to fall, all of us will fall one by one. Corruption will never be defeated. That is why we want to say to the comrades who worked in that important unit, who have been vilified, who have been targeted, particularly at SARS, they've done well. We appreciate the work that they've done. Comrade PG, as he's leading this campaign to clean state-owned enterprise of corruption, we support him, we are behind him. And we will meet all those who think they can take us back to the dark days on the streets as a Communist Party in a democratic fashion. And we will never allow any sort of intimidation or bullying by any individuals in this country. We live in a democracy. We fought for this democracy. Chris Hani, when he died and when he was killed on the 10th of April, was the basis upon which this date of freedom in our country was arrived at. It was the symbol that represented all the martyrs of our country for the freedom that we enjoy today. We cannot allow it to be stolen by demagogues and bullies who are trying to collude with corrupt individuals and the mafia syndicates to trample on our democracy and our rights. Thank you very much.
Sure. So that's just the prelude to the speech on Sunday. Okay. Thanks, Comrade Solly. I need to sit here. All right. A number of organizations have endorsed the content of this statement, and I'm going to ask them to just come forward and in 2 minutes or less just to deliver their message. So can I just check Amnesty International, and the rest of you can just come up now, but 2 minutes, and then we will take questions thereafter. Please introduce yourself, your 120-second message.
Hi everyone, I'm Shanila Mohammed. I'm Executive Director, Amnesty International South Africa. We've endorsed this statement for the simple reason that we feel that corruption is depriving people of their basic human rights. So the money that should be used to uplift the lives of people, the money that should be used for basic service delivery, the money that should be used to ensure that children get a quality education, that the right to health is upheld, is being used and stolen from the state. And what happens at the end of it is that the people who are at the coalface of poverty and inequality, their lives suffer. So, we have endorsed this because we stand very firmly against corruption. We stand very firmly for the rights, the human rights of people, and we feel that at this point in time, we need to stand firm and ensure that people's rights are not violated by state capture and by other methods of corruption that are depriving ordinary South Africans of getting a better life. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But stay with us.
Thanks, John. Forensics for Justice, we've been in the front line of fighting against state capture. We uncovered it in 2012 with the narrative of the Sunday Times on the so-called rendition, the Zimbabwe renditions. And when we picked up what was going on, we were very quick to start taking action. In October 2012, we opened our first round of criminal dockets against Mwebi, Jiba, Richard Ndluli, and many others. And from that point on, I think we've opened no fewer than 100 criminal dockets, and we've called for prosecution. We then became a victim. I had to spend on 58 fake criminal charges, no fewer than 94 court days on trial before I was acquitted or the cases were withdrawn. Myself and my staff were subjected to multiple apartheid-style police raids, unlawful raids on our offices, seizing our computers, seizing all of our papers. Some of my staff were kidnapped and taken away. They refused to say which police station they were held in. So we absolutely 100% have realized it and noticed that there is a fight back, and it's taking place right now. There have been attempts, even in the last week I've had police knocking on my door. So I'm fully aware of what's going on, and we all have to stand together. We're very happy to say that we would like to join forces with Kathrada Foundation. We have been working closely with Helen Suzman Foundation and Freedom Under Law, and we hope that together the whole community will stop this nonsense and stop the Fight Back campaign and let these people be held accountable. The good news is that today, for the first time, one of the components of state capture was at Randburg Regional Court, where he had his first appearance for dragging me and my children off the plane 3.5 years ago. And I think that's the first of many. I want to see them all go to prison.
Thank you. Stay.
Hello, my name is Zondo, and I'm here on behalf of the newly formed patriotic movement, and would like to endorse this initiative. Our first campaign has been to do an online petition asking the Minister of International Relations and the President to recall Ambassador Kolwane with immediate effect. And the campaign is actually running very well as things stand, online, because we don't believe that Ambassador Kolwane is fit and proper person to represent us in any capital of the world. So I'd like to participate, and make sure that on Sunday we also can make a contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. So can all of you just stay here? I mean, if we can get a few more chairs, it will be useful. Can I ask from the Young Communist League?
Hello, my name is Khawkhelo Lisoga from the Young Communist League South Africa. As the YCL, we endorse the campaign and we ensure that we support and mobilize our youth for Sunday Rally. Because this campaign is very clear and very progressive to ensure that we fight against corruption in our country as it delays the program of youth, the issue of unemployment and the issue of poverty eradicating. So as the YCL, we say we will make sure that we support this program until the money is fulfilled. We will ensure that we support the program to fight back and put the end of state capture, hands off our democracy.
Thank you. Thank you. Nicole?
Thanks. My name is Nicole Fritz and I'm here representing Freedom Under Law. We're very happy to endorse the statement and proud to be associated with those organizations who have signed the statement. The thing that some of you will be familiar with Freedom Under Law's work through several court cases. We have sought to challenge aspects of state capture, the appointment of persons to senior positions within the criminal justice system, to ensure essentially that those institutions were neutralized, hollowed out, and able to affect their constitutional obligations. Freedom Under Law's work is around ensuring rule of law and constitutionalism. We believe that the Constitution represents the promise of a better future for all South Africans. And we believe that the enterprise of state capture not only goes to hollowing out the state and its capacities, but hollowing out the promise of our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Johannesburg Against Injustice. 2 minutes.
Good morning.
At the end of 120 seconds, can all of you please clap?
Hi, I'm Peggy Pillay. I'm co-convener of the Johannesburg Against Injustice organization. Essentially, we just want to say that we fully endorse the statement made by, or read out by Alex. The reason we support it and we endorse the statement is I think South Africans are tired of this. We're tired of opportunism masking itself as revolution, you know. We're tired of intimidation and bullying. We're tired of disrespect in our parliament. And I think those are the reasons we believe that it's time to take action, and we're fully behind this campaign that chooses to do this.
Thank you. Alan Zondo Foundation. Sit. Sit.
I'm Anton van Dalsen from the Helen Suzman Foundation. The reason we're supporting this initiative is because, in essence, it's defending the essential principles of a constitutional democracy. And we will do whatever we can to defend those principles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other organization on the list, or not on the list, but would like to be on the list? Not for Parliament, but this one here. Can I just beg your indulgence? Mark, I know you're not representing anybody, but do you want to take 60 seconds or more and just come and give us a message here as well? You've been at the forefront of this in different ways and in different organizations. You cannot be there silent today.
My name is Mark Haywood. I'm the former director of Section 27, which I know is a signatory to this. I'm also a board member of the Treatment Action Campaign and one of the founders of Save South Africa. So all I want to say is that very happy to see this mobilization that's being prepared by civil society, because what we are witnessing on a daily basis around the attacks on the Zondo Commission in Parliament, in the public media space, is a concerted, coordinated, resourced campaign that aims to push back the very important gains that we have made against state capture in 2017 and 2018, and that it is time that the people of South Africa stood up again for social justice and democracy and accountability and made sure that this campaign does not succeed. We do not have the option of relaxing. We do not have the option of just sitting back and seeing what happens. Too much is at stake. What is really at stake is the future of our country, is social justice, is quality health systems, quality education systems, and the fight against inequality in South Africa. So I just want to, although I don't wear any hat officially, lend my full support to this very, very important step forward by civil society. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we also just acknowledge the presence of Adrian Lakay, former role, current role, whatever it is, but Adrian, your presence here is hugely appreciated. Anybody else, any other organization that is here wants to be saying anything? No? Good. We're opening up for questions now. All right. I'm going to have to stand to do this. Okay. I think you just have to stand from there and just say who you are and direct your question to whoever it is, and we'll take the first round.
This is Ahmed Kathrada from News 24. My questions are for SACP Second General Secretary. Mr. Mabaila, I've got 4 questions for you. You seem to paint Minister Gordhan as this holy cow. You even call him the leader of the fight against state capture. I'm curious, is the leader not supposed to be the president of the country in the fight against state capture? Are you saying the man can't do any wrong in your eyes? You also take issue, if I'm correct, just need clarity on this, with what the Chief Justice Mogoeng was saying yesterday with regards to corruption and state capture. I just want to get clarity if that's so, if you do take some issue with what he was saying. Former President Zuma's testimony yesterday, he was speaking, or during the week rather, he spoke of high-ranking ANC leaders who were involved in some form or the other with apartheid intelligence. I want to know if SACP will be taking this up with the ANC in terms of why the president or the former president sat on this information and even hired some of these people into his executive. And also, the public protector has said that she will institute legal action against you for calling her hired gun, amongst other slew of insults that you have called her in the recent past. I want to know if just to get your reaction on that.
All right, so that's the first round of questions. Let's deal with this one.
Yeah, I must say this is too much. Firstly, we are not projecting.
They want you here, so you better sit here. All the questions are for you.
No, not really. Thank you very much for the questions. We are not projecting Comrade PG as the holy cow that he can't do wrong. He's a human being. He will commit mistakes like all other human beings, myself included. What we are simply highlighting is the fact that he has been severely persecuted by the Fight Back campaign that did not want or were disturbed by his intention to deal with organized syndicates, criminals, and corruption, particularly at SARS. We organized a program when Sean Abrams was the head of NPA to Pretoria to go and protest against charges laid against Comrade Pravin after he was given almost 24 questions to answer that were intermittently interrupted with, withdrawn, brought back, later on charges withdrawn. And we established at that particular point in time the real rogue unit, the real people who were interested in capturing SARS. Now, there's a commission that was set up, the Nugent Commission, that has exposed the rot there. There are books that have been written, even by some of the people who were directly involved good civil servants who were almost targeted, ended up leaving public service precisely because of the rogue elements that have captured SARS. At the core of that, this narrative was changed to say there was a rogue intelligence unit at SARS. All lies were peddled in order to besmirch this, the integrity of this organization, of the interventions that were made. Now, I was just indicating that, yes, yesterday there was a court ruling that indicated that the unit was lawfully established. But then I've also indicated some of the successes of that unit. The unit dealt with drug lords, most powerful individuals that are killing our society. That unit, a small unit of brave South Africans, patriotic South Africans, were able to achieve that. They dealt with poachers of abalone. Abalone is one of the most expensive fish species in South Africa that makes good money for our country. This unit dealt with people who are trading in abalone, illegal. They dealt with people who are trading in illicit tobacco in this country. Some of them have went on to pay for political parties. We don't understand why the media will all of a sudden have selective amnesia about Mazotti, for instance, who actually is on public record, who have supported the tax crisis of one Julius Malema at some point. Why is he forgotten? Go and read the judgment yesterday. Who are the people implicated? Why this matter was in court? What were they trying to do? So that's what we think it's important to focus on. So we're not saying that Comrade Pravin is a holy cow. We are calling on every leader in our society to lead a campaign against corruption and state capture. And we appreciate everyone who contributes in this regard. The leader of the country remains President Cyril Ramaphosa. We appreciate his interventions as president. He has established commissions, made strong interventions, even removing the board at ESCOM. You remember when we organized a public imbizo of various organizations, one of our demands was the removal of the ESCOM board. And he made interventions. That board was removed because we are facing major crises as a country. And we haven't really sorted out those problems, but at least we have stabilized ESCOM now. It was because of these particular interventions. This is what is contained in the statement. The impact of corruption and state capture to public institutions like ESCOM. When the people don't have electricity, they immediately point at government, but they don't point at those who were actually destroying these state institutions by corruption. And those matters have been at this commission, the Zondo Commission. I'm not taking any issue with the Chief Justice. I don't know what the Chief Justice would have said. I respect him, and I think he has led by example, particularly the judiciary of our country. If there's any particular issue, I think it should have been alerted. But I appreciate his intervention as Chief Justice, and I think he's leading the judiciary quite well. The issue, of course, we should also say, there are people that in the state capture process that also targets jurists and legal persons, or people with powers like, for instance, what the point that we're raising, that the public protector must not allow herself to be used as the hired gun of the fight back campaign. So she has written me a letter. We have responded to that particular letter. There was no apology afforded to her. She doesn't deserve one, because I did not say what she thought I was saying. I've repeated what I said here now, and I'm awaiting her legal course that she said she will take against me. And of course, the Communist Party, in this regard, which I spoke on its behalf, has decided that it will take up this matter legally. But we reaffirm in this regard our call as we join this statement that an inquiry on a fitness to hold office must soon be set up by Parliament. Regarding these allegations by President Zuma at the Commission about some senior ANC comrades on the allegations of them being spies, we indicated from the beginning that the first thing is that we must not allow any diversion of the content at the Zondo Commission. The Zondo Commission is dealing with allegations of corruption and malfeasance against particular individuals that allowed the state to be abused and to be captured by individuals, not only the Guptas, but primarily the Guptas. So that's the point that the President should have been concerned much about, to deal with those questions. What we have then heard was a massive diversionary story from the real content of issues. And we have then said, even this question about allegations of spying, we felt there were irresponsible utterances, reckless, and not actually even belonging there. And we were quite shocked that a president who had presided over the ANC, who was deputy president of the country before, would have allowed these comrades to hold senior public office when they worked against the values of this democracy. Because if you were working for apartheid government, with the apartheid government, that means you never accepted democracy and freedom for the majority of the people. So we felt that it was quite unfair for him to, for whatever reasons, why would he even appoint these comrades, both of them as ministers, in his cabinet, when he had known all along that they were spies? He had worked with Comrade Mwaku when Comrade Mwaku was in the office of President O.R. Tambo. Why would he allow a spy to work in the office of our president and never raise a warning as the head of the intelligence services? That's completely irresponsible. So it was quite clear that this thing was made up in order for him to get away with murder, to divert attention of the real issues. Comrade Nyanda comes from a family that has given itself to the liberation of this country. He lost his own brother in Swaziland, killed by the apartheid government. Today he's alleged that he would have worked against the enemy. And why would he even allow him to be chief of staff of our army? So it is this thing that we think that are completely diversion from the real task. That is why we also do not want to be diverted into another political battle that's unnecessary. What is critical now is to defend our democracy, to make sure that those who aided state capture are held to account. That is why, Sullivan, I'm very happy that you are here. And you have taken people to court. You have been a great South African. You have, all forces were unleashed against you and your family. Security forces. And you stood firm. That's what we want all South Africans now to do, so that we deal with this corruption in the state institutions across the board, including in the security institutions. Because what happened at SARS was facilitated through the abuse of security institutions that now allowed the mafias to do as they please and get away with murder, almost to an extent where the public has to pay them instead of them paying the public. So these are the points that we're basically raising. But this is a broad campaign. It's not necessarily a single campaign on Comrade Pravin. It's a broad campaign to defend our democracy. But we can't deny the fact that at the moment, the frontline soldier in this campaign is Comrade PG. And he's been attacked. That's the point which I was trying to make. Thank you.
Okay. But we're not going to follow the previous example. Okay. One person, one question. One, I've noted two, and then three. Let's go.
Hi, Mohamed Rulani from EWN. Mr. Mapaila, I'm interested to find out from you first. The leaders of the ANC who are currently in government now were with the president was making out to his supporters at the commission on Monday. Super Mwaku is one of them, and also Mr. The mayor of Ekurhuleni is Mr. Masina. So, isn't the ANC, SACP, because they are this partner, portraying a different message, mixed message? You coming and telling us you worried about state capture, yet the man who was being said as an architect is being supported by some of those in government. Aren't you worried that you're not sending a strong signal you think you are if your alliance partner supports President Jacob Zuma, some of the leaders who are there, if you are serious in this fight for corruption. And I want to bring you there, Mr. Bolton. When we talk about state capture, people have been saying that there's too much focus on the Guptas. Johan Rupert was doing it for years, the Oppenheimers. There's all kind of issues that the Zondo Commission needs to expand its scope because it's too focused on one family. And Jacob Zuma said that he was introduced by this family by Mbeki, and also Mandela was friends with them, trying to say there's nothing wrong with the Guptas being so high up. So I just want to find out from you, aren't you worried that state capture might be broader than just focusing on this one family?
Okay.
Sarah Mapati from the Daily Maverick. A question for Mr. Mapayila, if I may, please.
Yeah.
You came up with the term state capture. So I wonder if you could tell us where you think, which institutions and which parties are hosting this fight back. And question from Sarah, where do you think the resources for it are coming from? Thank you.
All right. And the last one, this side.
Thanks. My name is Govind from ENCA. Based on the testimony of the former president at the State Capture Commission, then, Mr. Mapayila, would you say that the former president is part of the fight back? And then secondly, has the SACP reached out to the ANC at all following the testimony of the former president, requesting it to make a statement? Because while you say it was reckless and irresponsible, there is no such statement from the ANC, and as far as we know, the ANC has no problem with what was said. Okay. And then just for clarity, the other organizations that are here also agree that the testimony of the former president was reckless and irresponsible.
Okay, you want to make sure everybody speaks, that's fine.
Sumigio Ekajanini from The Citizen. This question is for Mr. Mapayila and also you, Mr. Bolton. I was wondering the overall message in the statement that you have is basically discrediting Zuma's entire testimony. So I was curious if any of what you said resonates with you and sparked curiosity whether or not what you said was true. So, for instance, his allegation about Rupert and his supposed conspiracy to manipulate the rand and the apparent threats that he made in the presence of Pigi and Marula. I was wondering if you thought there was any credence to that, given the fact that you have made statements, Mr. Mapayila, about Mr. Rupert. So I was wondering if you thought anything of that.
Okay. So you want to kick off? There's a couple of issues here for you.
I think it's unfair that it's all of us.
Yeah, but deal with what you have to deal with first, and then we'll...
Yeah, I must say, I think it's unfair that it's all of us here. Before we came here, we had a meeting, we had discussions to plan, to prepare, and we are here. Messages are sent to one person. Let me start with the one on Supra and others who are supporting President Zuma. Former President Zuma can be supported by all those who wish to support him. There's no problem with that. The issue is that we fought for the removal of Supra as premier, as the Communist Party. We led that campaign together with our comrades in Nehau in the Northwest. So we are happy he's no longer premier of our province in the Northwest because of how he led government. So in that regard, he's a leader of our movement in a particular respect, but we have aversions. That's the point that we're also included, we're raising in the statement, that political parties themselves have to reach a point in time when they can only have the most ethical of leaders to lead them. But we can't change democratic processes inside these organizations. Perhaps even our own organization will have its own weaknesses. But generally, that's the point that we can say about a Supra. So in that regard, there's no mixed message. President Zuma would have the people that supported him and so forth. As long as in their support they don't violate the ANC code of conduct, there should be no problem. Of course, to the extent that what is he in the court for becomes important morally, becomes important is what is in the court morally compliant with the ANC constitution and value system. That is the thing that those members should actually ask themselves. I can tell you that it doesn't represent an iota of moral integrity for me as an individual. He may have held particular political office at a particular point in time. I held him in high regard, but I think given what he has done, all that has been wiped out. But I still have respect for him as an individual, as a person. But otherwise, beyond that, there's nothing that I can say it's important to learn from. Comrade Joel Nechitenze once said when MK launched the National Council, he said, if I paraphrase him well, that the beneficiaries of corruption and state capture will not go down without a fight. He was almost predicting this period where we are in now. It's quite clear. There have been sessions where, for instance, people have undermined them. Sessions that have mothballed into concrete programs. For instance, just soon after Nasrec, the SG made a statement of the ANC, made a statement in Durban to the extent that it's only 5 years. We will deal with these matters. That's one example. There was a meeting in some hotel in Durban which rolled out a program. Contents of that meeting are being implemented. So the fight back, the beneficiaries of corruption and state capture, broad as they are benefiting, and the money has not yet been recovered. This is the money that is also being used to even capture the organization itself. That is why we can't allow this fight back to continue. And of course, if you like, you can't have the response that is necessary, for instance, from Luthuli House today. We would have expected much more rigorous leadership from Luthuli House about the behavior of all combatants or leaders of the movement. In fact, even these reckless statements of President Zuma, I'm not saying that his entire evidence or presentation was reckless. I was talking specifically on the allegations of spies on Comrade Mwaku and even the collusion that he mentioned about Comrade Nyanda. All I can say is that I have great respect for those comrades and their contribution in our liberation war. Of course, the allegations that have been raised about, that he said about Rupert, I should understand that definitely Anton Rupert is a capitalist. In class terms, he's my class enemy, but he's a patriotic South African. We were working together. I haven't even met him, but I'm simply saying his voice on the other side and our voice on the other side for constitutionalism, for the rule of law, for defense of our democracy, to fight against corruption, all those who were converging along those lines. But to the extent that we know the real people who were weakening the rand was not much what Anton Rupert said. Was the people who were rent shorting or what you call shorting the rent, who will say particular statement in order that they can participate in the currency market, and immediately they do that, they'll go on and conduct trade deals. The Communist Party has come out clearly about this question, and amongst them were the Guptas in this regard. So it doesn't make, for instance, Anton Rupert a holy man in this case. All he simply said, which I would have said it the same thing. I said to him, to President Zuma. I had not a discussion with Anton Rupert. We said to him when he wanted to remove Pravin Gordhan as minister and Mcebisi Jonasi, that but this is going to have an adverse effect on the economy. Because it's a simple logic. It doesn't need a rocket scientist to know that the rand was going to get a hit, it was going to be weakened, and our economy was going to pay hard for it. Actually, if you were to get the proper readings or assessment on this, we lost no less than 90 billion rand at South Africa through what is this funds that invest monies all over. They estimated that over 90 billion was lost for the removal of Pravin Gordhan and Mcebisi Jonasi. And again, with the removal of Nhlanhla Nene, we lost further billions. What kind of a president is this who can continue, who doesn't care about the value of the economy? These are the points that we're basically raising. They don't necessarily have to be raised by Anton Rupert. I have never even met Mr. Rupert, for that matter. But as a patriot, as a South African, we can come together to fight against corruption. And if he enjoys that space, there's nothing wrong with that.
When we see the Rupert leaks, as we have with the Gupta leaks, then we can start drawing the equivalence. When we see the Ruperts having alleged to have been appointing cabinet ministers, then we can start drawing the links. So, personally, I would like to see the Guptas in orange overalls, because I think they epitomize, they're not the full totality of state capture, but they epitomize its brazenness in all its forms, from the landing at Waterkloof to every other state-owned entity where they are alleged to have been involved in. And then top it all to then go and mess up the Himalayas, I think just rubs salt into the wound. So I don't think we must draw the equivalence between them and anybody else. Produce the evidence, make the case. Nobody's saying don't go and investigate as far back as 1652, but make the case and start the process. Here's a process that we think is of benefit to this country at this point in time, and we must support it and get it done with. There was a couple of other things where I think some of you are asked to say a few words. All of you are done. I think it was directed to you, Mark.
Just in answer to the question of where the resources are coming from. It's a simple answer. I don't know. I don't think any of us know. And I think it's something that needs the attention of investigative journalists. I think it's something that questions need to be asked about. But increasingly it seems that this fight back is coordinated, it's choreographed across different forms of media. It's purposeful and it has resources, and it makes sense that it would have found resources, because the people who are under investigation have a great deal to lose in terms of the monies they have already made out of corruption and the monies they will not make when the taps are turned off. So I think it's something that needs careful scrutiny. I think we should be asking questions about, or asking for the political party funding bill to be brought into effect much more quickly, so that we can see what is happening with all political parties in our parliament. I think we should ask for openness about who funds all NGOs, be they from the social justice sector, or be they Black First, Land First. Where is the money coming from? Because it suggests that there is a hidden hand that is facilitating this very serious fight back.
Okay. Anybody else? Short. No?
Can I just say one thing? I think I don't think anyone is under the illusion that the only private interests involved in state capture were the Guptas, although I think very clearly it would seem that they represent the most egregious instance of that. But I think that often the question put to civil society is, why are you disproportionately acting against the state or the government and not against private interests? And of course the state must and should have the monopoly on criminal justice resources in respect of investigation and prosecution. And a hollowing out of the state and its ability to effect accountability doesn't only mean an end to accountability, the ending of the prospect of accountability for the Guptas, but it essentially, the collateral damage of that is that it's an ending of accountability for all those parties who are involved in malfeasance and corruption. And so the strengthening of our state and ensuring that it has the requisite capacity to do this means that there is the prospect of accountability, not only in respect of this most recent instance of state capture, but for the decades in our country where accountability is required.
Just one word. One word. You know, the Guptas were not the architects of state capture. We've seen that. We've seen what was behind it. It was organized crime, short and simple. And they chose from the ranks of dirty cops, dirty prosecutors, dirty intelligence agents, dirty members of parliament, dirty ministers. Those are the people, and dirty businessmen. Don't forget the businessmen. You know, the company like Bosasa, who was funding on a regular basis ANC election campaigns to get votes for the ANC for no other reason than the quid pro quo was massive government contracts. You had people like Radovan Krecha, who's now got 35 years in prison. He killed 13 people in this country, and he was protected by dirty cops. So state capture, the Guptas were simply a symptom of state capture. They weren't the architects of it. The architects of it were the criminal networks that came together and saw an opportunity, and they capitalized on it. And we, all the people of South Africa, we're the victims, and we have to stand together and fight back. And this, I hope, will be our last fight. I hope to shut down forensics for justice within a year or 2 years' time.
I just want to say, for Amnesty International, I mean, you asked a question, the guy from the NCA, sorry, I've forgotten your name, about whether all of us here actually agree with some of the stuff in the statement, particularly around Jacob's statement. I mean, for Amnesty, we are a non-political organization, we're non-partisan. Our main focus is really on human rights and the impact that this is having on the rights of people who live in South Africa. So really, I mean, yes, there was stuff in that statement that ordinarily, you know, we wouldn't get involved in. But I think what we decided at this point is that state capture is now directly impacting on the lives of people, because we still have a country where people are using bucket systems. We still have a country where children are falling into pit latrines. We still have a country, you know, 25 years on, where basic medical care is not available. People are dying endlessly and needlessly. And so for us to step out of the fray and say, well, you know, we don't get involved in politics, we just felt that we can't do this. So, you know, it's not necessarily that we all have an opinion on that, but I think from the Amnesty perspective, it was very much about what is this doing to the lives of those who live in South Africa, and it's about time that we stopped, you know, accepting that these battles that go on up there are not directly impacting on the service delivery, on the lives of people, because yes, it is, at every single level, it is.
Thank you. So, in conclusion, Sunday we have a mass rally, the City Hall, starts at 2 o'clock. The 27th, further details will come, but there will be a very detailed workshop with various organizations to unpack the fight back and then to refine all the work in the focus areas. A number of other organizations have conferences and things coming up in the next few months, as well as public outreach work, explaining exactly what we've been talking about here, because I think with the amount of information, it's very easy to get lost in terms of what exactly was state capture, how did it work, who benefited, and what is the fight back. And that's the kind of work that we will have to take through. All of the other points in the statements, different organizations are mounting specific campaigns and advocacy work, and in some way or the other, that kind of work will be shared much more through this kind of association of organizations that are here, and many others that we hope will join us. Can I thank all of you for coming through, and all of the organizations and people who are here. There are refreshments outside. Thank you very much.
To a live